Hey, welcome back, Knicks fans. Once again, just wanted to recap tonight's game, the Knicks versus the Hawks. Very interesting game. Probably shouldn't have talked a lot of smack before. I was calling them everything under the sun. I was calling them birds. I was calling them the trailer park birds. I was saying the Knicks were going to cook this bird for dinner tonight, but of course, Trae Young showed up and cooked us instead. And so hats off to the Atlanta Hawks. Hats off to Trae Young. Excellent performance. I think he scored about 45, 46 points at the Garden tonight. It's nothing new. I wasn't, actually, one of my friends actually told me he was going to do something like that tonight. I wasn't too surprised that he did it. I guess he loves to perform here at the Garden. And so it is what it is. And so it was an excellent performance by Trae Young and his team, especially down the stretch, how they were able to just execute uh, perfectly down the stretch. Just wanted to go over a few key statistics before we go into our rank to uh, our impact numbers. And so the first one was the minutes. R.J. Barrett 41 minutes. I think that really he was played way too many minutes, and I think it had an impact on his play late third quarter and fourth quarter. You can notice his efficiency really dropped off late third and in the fourth quarter. And then also his defensive effectiveness did drop off a little bit in the fourth quarter. I felt like the coach probably just played him way too much. And then we have Obi Toppin, only 24 minutes. He was in foul trouble, but I felt like the coach could have played him in the fourth quarter and just let him foul out, just let him play, let him foul out. And he was very efficient today, but I was surprised by getting only 23 minutes. Mitchell Robinson, this is too many minutes. Most big men that have the injury history, like Mitchell Robinson, you shouldn't play them over 30 minutes. They barely get 30 minutes. Usually they average around 27, 28 minutes a game. And so that's an issue. So we'll have to see how many minutes the coach plays him tomorrow. If the coach plays him over 30 minutes again tomorrow, especially like around 34 minutes like he did tonight, that's going to be interesting to see. And I'm wondering if Mitchell Robinson and his team also notices these things. And I'm curious to see what he thinks or what their team thinks about it. Britt played 35 minutes. He plays a ton of minutes. He's the starting point guard for the team. However, he did play well today, shot very well from the field. Evan Fournier only 25 minutes. He shot poorly and was terrible really struggling on the defensive end. Had some pretty cool steals. I love how he does try to play the passing lane. It's just like, but the thing that's so crazy, he's like, literally, the man is like a statue. It's really funny. Sometimes he always does the thing where he just kind of like throw both hands up in the air and just kind of like shuffles his feet from side to side or like towards the offensive player. And it's just so funny. He kind of looks like he's some robber and a cop caught him in the act and he throws up his hands. And so it was really interesting. It was really funny to see that. He struggled on defense, and so he wasn't able to finish the game today. But he did some good things. But today was a struggle for him. Manny Quickly 6 of 11, shot 55% from the field. Only played 24 minutes. I felt like he probably should have gotten more, like 30 minutes, especially given the fact that the last few games he's been one of the biggest impact players on the team. He's been having one of the biggest impacts on the team. These guys, I'm not getting too much into these guys' minutes. It just wasn't really enough. The coach probably should have played them a little more, but Todd Gibson is the other one I do want to talk about. Almost 20 minutes. I know OB was in foul trouble, but I think the coach should have trusted OB just a little more, especially in the fourth quarter. Todd Gibson basically played all of the fourth quarter. He's an old man, and he got crossed up, fell on the garden floor, got crossed up by Trae Young, and so you can blame the coach for that. But either way, he did play a good game, though. He was efficient on the defensive end, and and was okay on the offensive end. Not that great, 205, 40%, so it was okay. And so rebounding is really interesting. I really thought the team would struggle without Randall on the rebound in front. It's only 41 rebounds on the team overall, but that was because the Hawks shot basically 50% from the field. We shot 49%, and so it wasn't a ton of rebounds to be had. But the Knicks did a pretty good job. So it was really R.J. Barrett 13 rebounds in the night, 10 defensive rebounds. So it's very interesting to see that. So it was kind of encouraging to see. So I think the Knicks might actually be okay moving forward if they didn't have Julius Randle. And that was the biggest worry for me. and a lot of the impact numbers, a lot of the numbers on as far as Julius's production that shows him as a huge impact player, because it doesn't include his efficiency, how efficient he is, and it also doesn't factor in his defensive effort, like what he's doing against his opponents, how efficient his opponents are against him. And so because of that, it's like those impact numbers for him is usually it's high, right? And the biggest part of it is because of the defensive rebound, because he gets a huge percentage of the team's defensive rebounds. He's grabbing like between 30 and 40% of the team's defensive rebound. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty nuts. And so, but seeing that we were able to get that production from R.J. Barrett, combination of R.J. and Obi, it was really good to see that. And R.J. he showed some really good stuff today. He showed me he's going to be a huge impact player. He's going to be one of those players. It looks like when he improves his efficiency, he's going to be a much better version of Jimmy Butler. Actually, a much better version, because it looks like at this rate, if they get rid of Randall, I have a feeling R.J. Barrett can average like 25, 8, and like 6. So he's gonna be putting up some monster numbers if they get rid of Julius. Assists was a little low today again. However, I think it's more with the coach in the lineups. I felt like he doesn't give him enough to work with. A lot of the guys he has on the team, they tend to just stand around sometimes and spot up. And it's like he doesn't play him with Obi enough, right? I'm curious to see how much he played with Obi tonight. Probably 20 minutes maybe, if that, probably even less. But Obi gives him a lot to work with. Like Obi and Mitchell Robinson gives him a lot to work with. The fact that he's got Obi, Mitchell Robinson, and then just give him 2 spot-up shooters on the outside. I think he can actually tear up defenses like that. And it's interesting the coach hasn't figured. Well, they haven't been able to figure that out yet. And so he did have 5 turnovers, and I think 2 or 3 of them were kind of late in the game. It was pretty ugly. It was like basically Randall-esque, And so it's interesting to see that. So it's more, I think, like I've said a few times, this whole team, they may not, people don't like to believe it. They think these guys are individuals, and there's no way Randall's play can corrupt these guys. Randall is like basically the big dog in the team, and he's one of the seniors on the team. And they watch what he's doing. They watch how he plays, because the coach is co-signing the way Randall plays. And so R.J. Barrett is gonna basically, whether he likes it or not, there's gonna be some things that he's gonna do is gonna be very similar to Julius Randle, like basically trying to back a man down into into the paint while the double team is coming, and not being able to see not knowing how to identify where the double team is coming. It's amazing how he basically turns over the ball the same way Julius Randle turns over the ball. It's always in the middle of the paint that they do it all the time. And so it's very interesting, and it's very interesting the coach hasn't been able to talk to them about it and see if he can give them another way of setting up so they don't have to constantly. I get it. If you can basically get into the middle of the floor and you get double team at that spot, you can tear up the defense. You can actually do some damage to the defense from that position. However, it just hasn't worked, for either player. And so hopefully R.J. Barrett can figure that out. And so those are basically the stats. Defensive stats. Basically, we struggled. The only notable performance on the defensive end I really want to talk about is Mitchell Robinson. But of course, Todd Gibson did an excellent job as well. But it's mostly Mitchell Robinson. He did an excellent job. Honestly, a lot of the numbers, even the impact numbers, a lot of the player impact numbers, it just doesn't do him any justice, because there's a lot that he does. Like, he boxes out, right? A lot. He basically, him boxing out keeps Capella off the offensive glass. Capella only had 1 offensive rebound. I'm not sure how many offensive rebound Capella averages a year, but I think it's more than 1. He probably averages like 3 offensive rebounds a game. And just him being able to do things like that, keep the offense off the boards by putting a body on the bigs, and also by cleaning up a lot of mess when people like get beat and goes to the basket. I mean, he just did an excellent job. And so a lot of that stuff, he doesn't get a ton of blocks, but he basically alters a lot of shots, and so a lot of those things just don't show up. So that's the only person I really want to give a huge kudos on the defensive end. And also Todd Gibson did pretty well as well. Everyone else didn't do so well. So defensive points. Let's see. That's what I was looking for here. 117 points. That's what they scored. So we have the net player efficiency. How efficient were our players versus their matchups? R.J. Barrett was 14% less efficient than his matchup. Obi Toppin was 11% more efficient. Mitchell Robinson was 45% more efficient. And so that's pretty much what we have here. Jericho Sims, 33% more efficient. However, I think he only had 2 points on the night, so it's not even worth really discussing. Taj only had, I think Taj only had 5 points. So although he was 26% more efficient. Defensive rebound here, like I said, if you take a look at this here, RJ, he's putting up Julius type numbers when it comes to these defensive rebounds. So that was very interesting to see that. And then this is the net point production percentage that I have here. And net point production percentage, yep. That's what we have here. And so I'm taking the percentage, how many percent of the MPP of your matchup, of your net performance was what was the percentage of the total that we lost by, essentially. That's essentially what it is. So that's what I'm calculating here. And then the percentage impact is essentially defensive rebound, the average of the defensive rebound, and then net point production percentage. And so over here, then I have the defense, the PIE with a defensive factor, and the PIE with just net point production percentage. Actually, not the net point production percentage, just the net point production. So it's basically the PIE, just regular PIE. Then I add in this here, the net point production by each of the individual players. So down here, I sorted everything over here. And so let me just recap what's happening this season. The biggest reason why we've been losing a lot, is because of our defense was a big problem early in the season, but more lately we've also struggled a lot on the offensive end throughout the whole season. And the biggest problem is our efficiency is way too low. Our most efficient players are our bigs and power forward, are our bigs. And these 4 are most efficient players on the year. But the problem is we don't know how to get them the ball. We have 2 very dynamic players, front court players, that basically put a lot of pressure on the rim. They just kind of go flying to the rim. And so with a player like R.J. Barrett, when he goes to the basket and gets double teamed, you see basically Obi Toppin comes flying baseline, and R.J. is just lobbing up the ball. It's just like it's too easy. When you have basically Obi Toppin on the floor with R.J. Barrett, and then you got shooters on the floor, I mean, that works. That's going to work. But it's I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been able to work enough. It works in spots, but they just haven't done it enough to take advantage of it, right? And so, but today, it was basically the same guys that are the most efficient. They were still the most efficient tonight. Emmanuel quickly, he's been turning things around. He was efficient tonight. He was 5% more efficient than his matchup. Again, these are basically tells us how much more efficient was our players against their matchups, right? And these guys were always more efficient than a matchup. But Emmanuel quickly, for the first time, well, not for the first time, but lately he's becoming more efficient than his matchup. And these guys down here basically were a drag, and basically their opponents were more efficient than they were. Net point production. So this is how much did you score your opponent by? That's what we have here. R.J. Barrett was 8, Emmanuel quickly 7, Mitch Robinson 5, Todd Gibson 3, Obi Toppin 2. I mean, Mitch Robinson really, honestly, the stats don't really show it, but if they would have won this game, I probably would have given them, saying like he was the most important player. And the crazy thing is, the stat, the way it's tabulated, it just doesn't, he's not always going to pop out as the biggest impact player, and that's mostly because of what he does. He puts a body on the bigs make sure they don't get the offensive rebounds, and the power forwards and the forwards and the guards come in and get the rebounds. That's really the true beauty of what Mitch Robinson does. And then also being able to alter shots, and play two man at the same time on pick and rolls to basically make these pick and rolls ineffective. Anytime he's in a pick and roll and they're trying to get in the lane, forget it. It's just not going to work. He plays it way too perfect, and that's why he does it. Trae Young doesn't even try it really on him that much. He just now he's just basically on the pick and roll. If Mitch is there, he's stepping back and he's shooting, and so that's where Obi Toppin, he should have been going over the screen to come around and to challenge the shot. I think not an X's and O's guys. I'm not sure if I'm wrong about that, but that's what it kind of looked like he should have been doing. But Mitchell Robinson, excellent performance today. And so down here we have the percentage defensive rebounds, net point production percentage, net point production percentage. That's what we have here in this column. And then this percentage impact is taking the average of both of them. And after that, I sorted it. And that's what we have. R.J. Barrett was still top dog, was the most biggest impact player. Then Emmanuel Quickly, then Mitchell Robinson, Todd Gibson, Obi Toppin, right? That's what we had. Then the rest of the guys were a drag on the team. And interestingly enough, if you look, my impact, my method of calculating the impact this time around was actually, was pretty interesting. It was pretty similar. They're not exactly the same, but it kind of like the same guys kind of show up, right? So PIE with defensive factor, it's RJ Barrett was still top dog. Emmanuel Quickly was number 2, just like in my method. Obi Toppin was number 3 instead of Mitchell Robinson. And then Mitchell Robinson was number 4. So Obi Toppin and Mitchell Robinson swapped in these two ranks. And then 5th was Todd Gibson. Quentin Grimes was 6th. And then everyone else after that was essentially a drag, right? And if you notice, basically the PIE with defensive factor was pretty similar to the PIE with the net point production by itself. The net point production, it does factor in defense a little bit. So PIE with net point production is the PIE, and then you add in the amount of points that you outscored your opponent by, or the amount of points your opponent has scored you by. And so that's what this is. And so it's always going to be a little different from this. This here factors in the net point production, but it also factors in how efficient your opponent was against you. And so that's what we're doing here. So essentially, that's pretty much it. That's what I have for today's game. These are basically the guys who had an impact on the game is ranked. And, from there, you can, I'm not trying to talk, I really don't want to talk too much about negative. I don't want to talk about whose fault it was that we lost this game. You can kind of look at these rankings and look at these numbers and just kind of guess yourself what happened, where we went wrong. And that's pretty much what I have. Please like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Comment below. I'll be more than happy to respond. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say.